Hello, Night Seekers, and welcome to Lacuna Noir. This is where forgotten stories and gentle voices meet, carrying you softly into peaceful sleep, wrapped in mystery. Before tonight's stories begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know. And a little note before we begin. You may notice a few brief ads in the first 10 minutes, but after that, the rest of the video is completely ad-free. Just you, the silence, and the stories. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the night carry you. If you're drawn to these quiet, shadowed nights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story when darkness calls. For the past few weeks, I have not been able to tell which of my memories are real and which ones were placed inside my head. Dates have started appearing in my journal that cannot exist. April 31st is written on one of the pages. I know April only has 30 days, but the entry is there in my handwriting. Other pages keep appearing, too. They describe conversations and events I do not remember experiencing, yet every sentence sounds exactly like something I would write. My younger brother Nathaniel is missing. At least, I believe he is missing. My parents keep telling me that I have never had a brother. They say I have always been an only child. They say the bedroom at the end of the hall has always been a storage room, even though I remember Nathaniel sleeping there. I remember sitting beside him when he was afraid. I remember arguing with him, making fun of him, protecting him, and telling him stories through our old walkie-talkies. I started keeping this journal because writing everything down was the only way I could separate reality from whatever the attic was putting into my mind. I am copying these entries exactly as I found them, while I can still remember what they mean. If I ever begin saying Nathaniel never existed, please do not believe me. On April 25th, 2025, Mom asked me to look for our old Christmas lights. They were supposed to be somewhere in the attic, buried beneath boxes of decorations we had not touched in years. It sounded like a normal chore. I dragged the folding ladder down from the ceiling and placed my foot on the first step. Nothing felt unusual until I reached the top rung and pushed my head through the attic opening. The feeling hit me immediately. It was happiness, but that word does not fully explain it. It was warmer and deeper than happiness. It felt like every good memory I had ever forgotten had suddenly returned at the same time. It felt like coming home after being away for years, even though I was still inside my own house. It was pure, impossible bliss. I climbed into the attic, and for a moment it felt as though time had folded over itself. Soft beams of light passed through the small window and filled the air with glowing pieces of dust. Old parts of my childhood covered the floor in gentle piles. There were Barbie dolls with tangled hair, my pink lava lamp, boxes filled with school projects, and old One Direction posters curling at the corners. I had not been in the attic for years, but almost nothing had changed. Everything seemed to be waiting for me. My old toys were exactly where I remembered leaving them. A plastic tea set sat beside a cardboard box. A stuffed rabbit I had lost when I was 9 rested against an old lamp. Even the smell was familiar. Dust, old wood, cardboard, and something sweet that reminded me of vanilla. Then I noticed the doors. There were 4 of them standing in a line against the far wall. They did not belong there. I had been in the attic many times when I was younger. It was not large enough to contain 4 rooms. The far wall should have been directly beneath the roof, with nothing but wood and insulation behind it. But the doors were real. Each one was closed tightly. Their wooden surfaces looked old, yet there was no dust on them. The handles were made of dull brass, and the spaces beneath the doors were completely dark. I should have climbed back down. I should have called Mom. Instead, I stared at the doors with a strange feeling of excitement. The warmth in the attic grew stronger. It pressed gently against my chest, telling me that I was safe. It made the doors feel less like a warning and more like a surprise someone had prepared, especially for me. I leaned over the open hatch and called down. Nathaniel, you have to see this. A few seconds later, my younger brother appeared at the bottom of the ladder. His face was tight with suspicion. Mom said not to go up there anymore, he said. I rolled my eyes. It's just the attic. Mom told me to come up and find the Christmas lights. Nathaniel's expression changed. No, she didn't. Yes, she did. She asked me about 10 minutes ago. Grace, Mom is at work. I stared at him. For a moment, the warm feeling inside me weakened. Mom had asked me to look for the lights. I remembered her standing near the kitchen doorway. I remembered her voice. I remembered her telling me they were probably inside a blue box near the attic window. But Nathaniel was right. Mom had left for work that morning. I tried to laugh. Well, I found some of our old toys. That was enough to convince him. He climbed the ladder slowly, looking around as if he expected something to move behind the boxes. When he stepped into the attic, he did not smile the way I had. He wrapped his arms around himself and stayed close to the hatch. Then he noticed the 4 doors. His face became pale. Those weren't here before, he said. I know. We should go downstairs. Don't you want to see what's inside? No, I walked toward the doors, and after a moment, Nathaniel followed. He stayed so close that his shoulder almost touched mine. Which one should we open first? I whispered. None of them, he whispered back. I don't like this. The second door from the left seemed to pull my attention toward it. I cannot explain why. It looked exactly like the others, but something about it made me feel as though I had already decided. I reached for the handle. Nathaniel grabbed my wrist. Grace, don't. It's just a door. It shouldn't be here. I gently pulled my arm away and turned the handle. The door opened with a long, slow creak that sounded almost like a sigh. Behind it was a room filled with presents. There were hundreds of them. Boxes of every size were stacked from the floor almost to the ceiling. Some were wrapped in bright paper covered with stars, snowflakes, balloons, and cartoon animals. Others were covered in shiny gold or silver paper. Every package had a ribbon. Every ribbon had a tag. The tags carried our names. Grace, Nathaniel, some were written in Mom's handwriting. Others looked like Dad's. A few appeared to have been written by relatives who had died years ago. I stepped inside. Holy crap, I whispered. These are for us. Nathaniel remained near the doorway. This isn't right. I picked up a small box wrapped in purple paper. My name was written across the tag. Let's open one. My heart was beating hard, but not because I was frightened. I felt excited, almost dizzy. I wanted to know what was inside. I needed to know. Nathaniel shook his head quickly. Don't open it. What if Mom and Dad forgot about them? All of them? Maybe they kept buying gifts and hiding them. For how many years? I laughed, although his question made sense. Maybe it's some kind of surprise. A surprise from who? Before I could answer, we heard the noise. It came from somewhere beyond the next door. A low, dragging sound moved across the floorboards. It sounded heavy. Slow, wet, something was pulling itself through the room beside us. Nathaniel grabbed my hand. The warmth vanished instantly. The room full of presents no longer felt exciting. The bright paper looked too colorful. The bows seemed too perfect. The tags with our names felt like labels attached to traps. The dragging noise stopped. For several seconds, there was only silence. Then, something struck the wall from the other side. Nathaniel squeezed my hand. Run, he whispered. We ran, We crossed the attic so quickly that I nearly fell through the open hatch. Nathaniel climbed down first, and I followed without looking back. As I pulled the ladder closed, I thought I heard something moving above us. Not running. Crawling. On April 26, Nathaniel and I sat on the living room floor, wrapped in blankets. Neither of us had slept much. We kept staring at the ceiling. The entire house felt different. The air seemed too still. The normal sounds of the walls settling and the pipes moving felt louder than before. Every small creak made Nathaniel look toward the hallway that led to the attic hatch. It felt as though whatever had been inside the attic had followed us downstairs. I finally broke the silence. You saw it, right? Nathaniel did not answer. The room, I continued. The presence. You saw all of that. He gave a small nod. So I wasn't imagining it. No, and you heard the noise? I don't want to talk about it. But Nathaniel, I said I don't want to talk about it. His voice cracked. That silenced me. I had never seen him look so frightened. He seemed younger than he really was. His knees were pulled against his chest, and his face was pale beneath the blanket. I was his older sister. I should have protected him. Instead, I had brought him into the attic and opened the door even after he begged me not to. His eyes moved toward the hallway again. I understood his fear because I felt it too. But underneath my fear, the warmth from the attic was still there. It had not completely left me. It rested somewhere deep inside my chest, quietly calling me back. When I closed my eyes, I could still see the glowing dust and the old toys. I could still feel the comfort that had surrounded me when I first climbed through the hatch. Part of me wanted that feeling again. I want to go back up, I said. Nathaniel turned so quickly that his blanket slipped from his shoulders. Are you insane? I just need to understand what's there. We already know what's there. Something horrible. We only opened one door. That is not a reason to open the other three. I need to know what's behind them. Nathaniel stared at me as though I had become a different person. Did you not hear that thing behind the wall? It didn't hurt us. It was dragging itself across the floor. It only made a noise. Listen to yourself, he said. That is the dumbest thing you have ever said. I laughed a little, hoping he would laugh too. He did not. I'm serious, Grace. There's something wrong up there. I felt it. So did I. No, I mean, I felt it, watching us. It knew we were there. And when we tried to leave, it felt like it didn't want us to go. I stopped smiling. He was right. The moment we had turned toward the hatch, the entire attic had seemed to change. It had felt like the space was holding its breath, waiting to see whether we would escape. Nathaniel reached out and grabbed my hand. Promise me you won't go back. I looked at him. Please, he said. I mean it. I wanted to promise him. I wanted to mean it. But I did not. On April 27, I lay awake for hours. The ceiling fan threw moving shadows across my bedroom walls. Every sound inside the house made my heart jump. When I checked my phone, it was almost 2 in the morning. I gave up trying to sleep. I put on a hoodie and took my flashlight from the desk. Then I grabbed the pocket knife from my drawer and the old wooden baseball bat from the back of my closet. I told myself I was being careful. I told myself I was only going to look. The hallway floorboards groaned beneath my feet. Every sound seemed painfully loud in the sleeping house. When I passed Nathaniel's room, I stopped. His door was closed. For a moment, I considered waking him. Then, I imagined his face when he realized what I planned to do. The guilt twisted inside my stomach, but the pull of the attic was stronger. I continued down the hall. The ladder unfolded with a soft click. I climbed slowly, holding the flashlight between my teeth and the bat beneath one arm. The moment my head entered the attic, the warm feeling returned. Bliss spread through my body. The attic welcomed me like an old friend. The dust shone inside the flashlight beam. The air smelled of old wood, vanilla, and something sweet. It was warmer than the rest of the house, almost like sunlight had been trapped inside the walls. I stood there for several seconds, letting the feeling surround me. Everything was still. The door to the present room was closed again. There were no scratches around the handle, no marks on the floor. It looked as though Nathaniel and I had never opened it. The other doors waited beside it. I walked toward the one on the far right. The brass handle was warm beneath my fingers. Why was everything so warm up there? I took a breath and turned it. The room beyond smelled like strawberry shampoo and the perfume I used to steal from Mom's bathroom when I was a child. A soft pink light moved gently across the walls. It seemed to pulse like the glow of a nightlight hidden behind fabric. The room was my childhood bedroom. Not the room as it looked now. It was exactly as it had been when I was little. My canopy bed stood in the corner, perfectly made. All my favorite stuffed animals sat in their proper places. My rainbow CD player rested on the dresser, and Taylor Swift's Fearless album was inside it. My notebooks were stacked neatly on the desk. My glitter pens were arranged by color. My sketchbooks were open to old drawings from the years when I dreamed of becoming an artist. Everything was waiting for me. Then I saw the doll. She sat cross-legged on the floor, smiling. Her name was Mary. She had been my favorite doll. Years earlier, my best friend Landry and I had cut off all her hair while pretending to give her a makeover. Later, one of her arms broke off. Mom told me it was time to let her go, so I buried her in the backyard beneath a tree. But Mary was inside the room. She had both arms. Her hair was long and perfect. Her plastic eyes blinked. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt happy. The room was too perfect to question. I stepped inside. The carpet was soft beneath my bare feet, even though I clearly remembered putting on shoes before leaving my bedroom. The room smelled like birthday cake. I walked past the mirror I had cracked in 6th grade. It was whole again. The beanbag chair I had begged for on my 10th birthday sat in the corner. The fabric was clean, and the small rip on the side had disappeared. I sat on the bed. The princess sheets moved gently around me. They seemed to shape themselves against my body, holding me like arms. For a moment, I thought I could stay there forever. The attic could keep the old version of my room alive. I would never have to grow older. I would never lose another toy, another friend, or another part of myself. Then the music began. At first, it was soft. A lullaby played through the CD player, even though the disc inside was not a lullaby album. I had never heard the song before. Still, it felt familiar. The music grew louder. It slowed down. The notes stretched until they sounded warped and sick. Mary's head turned toward me. Her smile disappeared. The pink light flickered red. Pink, red, pink, red. Then something struck the wall behind me. Thud, a dragging noise followed. Thud, drag, the walls began to pulse. The air grew thick and difficult to breathe. My flashlight flickered on the floor, its beam twisting wildly across the carpet. The door slammed shut. I jumped from the bed. Something moved beneath the carpet. A shape pushed upward from underneath, crawling slowly toward me. It was too large to be a rat or any animal that could have entered the house. I grabbed the door handle. It would not move. I pulled harder. Locked, the shape beneath the carpet came closer. I struck the door with my shoulder. Pain shot through my arm. It did not open. I hit it again. The carpet rose behind me as something long and narrow moved beneath it. On the third attempt, the door burst open. I fell backward onto the attic floor. The music stopped. The pink light disappeared. The door closed again before I could stand. I remained on the floor, breathing hard, staring at it. Everything was quiet. It looked as though nothing had happened. Then I noticed Mary sitting on the floor in front of me. Her smile had returned. In her small plastic hand, she held a photograph. It showed me standing in the attic. I was in the exact position where I stood when I picked it up. On April 28, I woke in my bed without remembering how I had returned. One moment, I had been kneeling on the attic floor with Mary and the photograph in front of me. The next moment, I was beneath my blankets, still fully dressed. My flashlight was in my hand. My bedroom window was open. I knew I had closed it before going to bed. For the rest of the night, I remained awake with the blanket pulled up to my chin. I listened for footsteps, scratching, music, or dragging sounds. Nothing came. By morning, Mary was gone. The photograph was still inside my pocket. At breakfast, Mom stood beside the counter, humming while she made coffee. She acted as though it were a completely normal morning. Nathaniel sat across from me. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked as though he had been crying or had not slept. He knew I had gone back. I placed the photograph inside a folded napkin and passed it beneath the table. His hands shook when he opened it. His face lost its color. "Where did you get this?" "My old doll gave it to me." He pushed his plate away and stood. "We need to tell Mom." "No, we have to. Dad will panic. He already thinks I've started sleepwalking again." "Not Dad," Nathaniel said. "Mom," I looked at him. "She knows something." We found Mom inside the laundry room folding towels. "Mom," I said, "can I ask you something?" She looked up and saw our faces. Her hands stopped moving. "What happened?" I went back into the attic. The color drained from her face. The towel fell from her hands. "Which room?" she whispered. Nathaniel and I looked at each other. "The door on the right," I said. It had my old bedroom inside. My toys were there. Mary was there too. Mom closed her eyes. She gave me this. I handed her the photograph. She barely looked at it before pressing her fingers against her temples. "It's happening again." Nathaniel stepped closer. "What do you mean, again?" Mom slowly sat on top of the washing machine as though her legs could no longer hold her. "I was about your age when I found it," she said. The attic looked different then. It seemed smaller, but it was still wrong. "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know." She stared at the photograph. "It remembers things. Sometimes it brings them back. But they don't return correctly. They're never exactly the way they should be." "Why didn't you tell us?" Nathaniel asked. "Because I sealed it. I locked every door. I thought it was over." Her eyes moved toward me. "But you opened one. That's all it takes." I opened two. Mom looked frightened. "What happens now?" "I don't know exactly. You went through this before." "Yes, but it changes. It shows different things to different people." She took my hand. "I think it feeds on memory. It feeds on longing. The more you miss something, the more material it has to build with. And if I keep going back," she looked directly into my eyes, "it will learn you. Then you will begin losing yourself to it." That night, something scratched gently against my bedroom door. The sound was not loud. It was slow and careful, as if whatever was outside did not want anyone else to hear it. I pressed my ear against the wood. A voice whispered from the hallway, "Come back." I told myself I would not return. I told myself the attic was dangerous. But the photograph inside my pocket felt hot against my skin. The attic's pull no longer felt gentle or warm. It felt hungry. I felt it in my dreams. I felt it in my bones. And still, I went back. Late on April 30, it was almost 2 in the morning when I quietly left my bed with the flashlight and baseball bat. The house was so silent that it seemed to hum. Nathaniel's bedroom door was partly open. I stopped outside it. I thought I saw his face in the darkness, but when I looked again, there was only an empty doorway. He knew I was leaving. He always seemed to know. But he did not come after me. I reached the attic ladder and climbed. This time, the attic was colder. It also seemed taller. The ceiling was much farther above me than it had been before. The room had grown, even though that should have been impossible. The doors were still there. 3 had brass handles. 1 had a black handle. I remembered clearly that all 4 handles had been brass. The black handle seemed to absorb the light from my flashlight. I walked toward it. The door opened before I touched it. Beyond it was a maze of mirrors. Some were tall and narrow. Others were wide enough to cover an entire wall. A few were cracked. Their frames were old, dark, and damaged by time. There were no visible walls or windows, only endless reflections. My flashlight flickered as I entered. The surface of each mirror moved slightly when I passed, almost like water disturbed by a breeze. Then it became still again. At first, the mirrors showed my reflection. Then they began showing other versions of me. In one, I was smiling in a birthday dress I had never owned. In another, I was crying. My nose was bleeding, and dark bruises covered my arms. In another, I was much older, sitting alone in a house I did not recognize. Then, I reached a mirror where I was not alone. Someone stood behind my reflection. I recognized the shape immediately. I turned around. There was nothing behind me, but the figure remained inside the mirror. It stood in the shadows several feet behind my reflected body. I raised my flashlight. The figure did not react. I stepped forward. My reflection did not move with me. I stumbled backward and struck something solid. I screamed. "Hey, it's me. It's just me." Nathaniel grabbed my shoulders. My knees nearly collapsed. "What the hell are you doing here? I couldn't let you come alone. You were supposed to stay downstairs. You never told me anything," he snapped. "You were going to come up here and get yourself killed." I wanted to yell at him. I wanted to tell him he should have stayed safe. But the room seemed to press against my voice. Everything was too quiet. I looked back at the mirror. The shadow figure was gone. "Something's wrong," Nathaniel whispered. "This place is bigger. I know, we need to leave." He grabbed my wrist. When we turned around, the door had disappeared. There were only mirrors. Hundreds of them surrounded us. "It was here," I said. "I know it was here." The reflections began to pulse. Our breath turned white in the cold air. The figures inside the mirrors were no longer memories. They were possibilities. In one reflection, I saw Nathaniel falling into darkness. In another, he was screaming, while hands pulled him through a wall. I saw myself scratching at the floor until my fingers bled. I saw Mary crawling behind me, dragging her body while smiling. A low, hissing sound rose from every direction. Nathaniel tightened his grip on my arm. "We have to move." We pushed deeper into the maze. We struck mirrors with our shoulders and searched for one that showed our real reflections. I did not know how I would recognize the correct mirror, but I believed I would feel it. Footsteps began behind us. They did not sound like feet. They sounded like long nails scraping across glass. Nathaniel turned pale. I looked over my shoulder. One of the mirrors shattered. A dark shape crawled through the broken frame. It had too many joints. Its limbs bent in directions they should not have bent. Pieces of glass clung to its skin, but it did not seem to feel pain. I grabbed Nathaniel's hand. "Run!" We ran through the maze. Mirrors cracked as we passed. Frames fell around us. Broken glass covered the floor. The creature followed. I could hear it breathing. Then I saw a mirror that did not ripple. Its surface was solid and still. It showed Nathaniel and me exactly as we were. Only us. No shadows. No other versions. Jump through it, I said. Nathaniel stared at me. What? Just do it. I swung the bat into the glass. The surface broke. I closed my eyes and jumped. Nathaniel followed. Instead of striking a wall, we fell through empty space. We landed hard on the attic floor. The mirror door slammed behind us. Nathaniel lay beside me with both hands covering his ears. I crawled toward him. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. He did not answer for a long time. The next journal entry is dated April 31st, 2025. I know that date cannot exist. My phone says April only has 30 days. Every calendar says the same thing. But April 31 is written at the top of the page in my handwriting. The entry says the day felt like static. Dad made pancakes as though everything were normal. He hummed while flipping them. The radio played old songs from the 1980s. The syrup bottle was sticky, and the butter melted too quickly. My mind kept replaying the attic, the mirrors, the missing door, the creature crawling through the glass. Nathaniel did not come downstairs for breakfast. I watched his bedroom door while I ate. Usually, I would not have worried. Nathaniel often stayed inside his room for hours, especially when he was upset. But that morning felt different. Mom kept looking at me. Her eyes were red. Once, she opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something. Then she closed it again and walked away. She looked afraid that speaking might cause her to remember something she had already begun forgetting. I spent the afternoon cleaning my room. Really, I only moved things around so I could feel in control. I moved my bookshelf. I vacuumed behind the dresser. I arranged old books and pretended I still read them. The whole time, I thought about Nathaniel. I remembered how pale he had looked after we fell through the mirror. It had seemed as though part of him had remained inside the room. After dinner, I finally went to his bedroom and knocked. The room was dark except for the pink salt lamp on his nightstand. Nathaniel? There was no answer. I knocked again. It's me. After a long pause, his voice came from inside. Come in. He sat on the floor with his knees pulled against his chest. His hood covered most of his face. The old walkie-talkie we used as children was in his hands. He pressed the button. Released it. Pressed it again. Released it. We haven't used those in years, I said. I found it in my closet. The second walkie-talkie sat on the nightstand. I picked it up and pressed the button. Static filled the room. The sound was strangely comforting. What are you listening for? I asked. Nathaniel stared at the device. I don't know. He pressed the button again. Maybe I'm listening for a version of myself that never went into the attic. I sat beside him. After a while, he spoke again. I keep thinking about your jewelry box. The pink one with the ballerina? He nodded. I barely remember it. I saw it inside one of the mirrors. I looked at him. It wasn't broken, he continued. It was perfect. The ballerina was spinning and music was playing. His eyes were wet when he looked at me. But I don't think it was my memory. What do you mean? I think it was the attic's memory. We sat quietly. I did not understand what that meant, but the idea frightened me. Do you think we were supposed to find that room? He asked. I don't know. Sometimes it felt like the attic was trying to scare us. Other times it felt like it was showing us something. Like a test? Maybe. A test. For what? I don't know. He looked down at the walkie-talkie. Maybe it was an invitation. To do what? To stay. The words seemed to fill the room. Stay, Nathaniel moved his thumb across the side of the walkie-talkie. When we were little, you used to talk to me through these every night. I remember. You told me stories about dragons and secret tunnels beneath our backyard. A small smile appeared on his face. Part of me still believes those stories. I only told them because I wanted you to feel safe. He turned toward me. And now, you're the one who doesn't feel safe. I gave a weak laugh. I don't feel real. We remained there for a long time. Before going to bed, I took the second walkie-talkie to my room. I did not sleep. The photograph from the attic was in my hand. Originally, it had shown me standing before a closed door surrounded by soft yellow light. The picture had changed. The door behind me was now open slightly. Something waited in the darkness beyond it. On May 1, I woke to the smell of rain and something burning. It was not smoke from a fire. It smelled like dust heating on an old light bulb. Mom sat in the living room beside a wooden box I had never seen before. It had iron hinges and deep scratches across the lid. The box was open on the coffee table. It contained old letters, loose papers, and photo albums that looked older than Mom. She held a photograph in her hands and kept turning it over, as though she expected to find an answer written on the back. Mom, she jumped. I didn't hear you. You weren't paying attention. She stared at me for a moment. Then she sighed. Come sit down, she said. It's time. The first thing she showed me was a letter. The paper had become yellow with age. The ink had spread in places, as if the words had been wet with tears. The letter was addressed to Mom. It had been written by her mother. It said that if Mom was reading it, the attic had opened again. It said the attic always returned when something inside the family was broken. The final sentence said, "Whatever you do, please don't forget." I read the letter twice. It started with my mother, Mom said. Or maybe it began before her. I don't know. She touched the edge of the paper. We talked about it once. The next day, she acted as though the conversation had never happened. Mom removed a photograph from the box. It showed a young girl standing in an attic. The girl was around my age. It was Mom. The attic in the picture looked different from the one inside our house. It was not dusty or dark. Toys stood neatly on shelves. A tea set rested on a small table. A stained glass lamp filled the space with golden light. It looked safe. It looked like a dream. That's me, Mom said. My stomach tightened because I felt sure I had seen the room before. I thought it was a secret playroom, she continued. My mother never allowed me into the attic, but one day I found the key hidden in her sewing box. Mom's voice became quieter. Once I opened the first door, I couldn't stop returning. She told me about the rooms she had seen. They were not the same rooms Nathaniel and I had entered. One was a copy of her childhood bedroom, but everything inside it was cleaner and brighter. All her stuffed animals were there, including the ones she had ripped apart during tantrums. The walls were covered with drawings she did not remember making. Another room contained birthday parties she had never experienced. Tables were covered with cakes and gifts. Children she had once known stood around her, smiling and asking her to stay. The worst one was the music room, Mom said. It contained an old record player that played lullabies even when it was not connected to electricity. She would sit inside the room for hours. Sometimes she could not remember entering the attic or returning to her bedroom afterward. At first, it helped me forget, she said. Then it made me forget things I wanted to remember. She pressed her fingers against her temple. I began seeing other versions of myself. I saw them in mirrors and shadows. At first, they looked happy. What happened later? They changed. I remained silent. One day, I saw another version of myself standing at the top of the attic stairs. She looked exactly like me, but the way she smiled was wrong. She smiled like she was saying goodbye. Mom stared toward the ceiling. I ran. I locked the attic and burned the key. Did that stop it? For a while. She went down the hallway and returned carrying a cracked music box shaped like a carousel. When she wound it, a lullaby began playing. My body went cold. I knew the song. It was the same melody I had heard inside my childhood bedroom. I found this after your grandmother died, Mom said. It was inside the same box as the photographs. She showed me another picture. My grandmother stood in an attic doorway holding the same music box. I don't think the attic is only a place, Mom said. It's a trap made from memories. It builds rooms out of the things we try to bury. Then it gives those memories back to us, only prettier, softer, better, like a gift. Yes, she looked into my eyes. But the gift always takes something in return. I asked whether the attic had ever physically hurt her. I also asked why she had never convinced Dad to move away. Instead of answering immediately, she lifted her sleeve. A thin scar ran from her wrist to the inside of her elbow. It was pale, rough, and uneven. I thought I could cut it out, she said. Cut what out? The part of me it remembered. My chest tightened. You were only 8 when I first found you sleepwalking, Mom said. I did not remember sleepwalking when I was 8. You walked directly to the attic door. You stood beneath it for almost an hour. Your eyes were open, and you kept whispering to someone I couldn't see. I don't remember that. I know. Who was I talking to? You never told me. Mom placed the photographs back inside the wooden box. After that, I made your father cover the attic entrance with boards. A few days later, the boards were gone. Your father had no memory of putting them there. She closed the lid. That's what the attic does. It makes people forget. But for some reason, I never completely forgot. Why? I don't know. She rested her hand on the box. I hoped you would forget too. But now, it's awake again. That night, I lay in bed thinking about everything Mom had told me. The music room. The other version of her. The idea that the attic was not simply part of our house. It was a reflection. It was a place where memories went to rot and returned wearing beautiful faces. I thought about Nathaniel. I remembered how lost he had looked in his bedroom. I wondered whether he had already seen another version of himself. I hoped he had not, but part of me knew he was already too far gone. On May 3, at around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They were soft and quick. I left my bed and opened the door. The hallway was empty. The attic hatch was open. The ladder hung down. Nathaniel's shoes sat directly beneath it. A voice whispered from above. You weren't supposed to wake up. It sounded like Nathaniel. I jolted upright in bed. I had been dreaming. Nathaniel was not in the attic. The open hatch and the shoes had not been real. At least, that was what I told myself. My bedroom window was open again. Cold air moved through the room. The house was completely silent. I reached for the walkie-talkie on my nightstand. Nathaniel? Static answered. Then I heard his voice. It was so quiet that I almost missed it. I think I'm inside. I ran into the hallway without putting on shoes. The attic entrance was open. The ladder was down. A weak yellow light shone from above. Nathaniel? I called. Are you up there? There was no answer. I climbed. The moment my head passed through the hatch, I knew something had changed. The attic was clean. The old boxes had been stacked neatly against the walls. The forgotten toys were gone. There was no dust. It looked as though someone had been living there. The 4 doors remained at the far end. One stood partly open. Yellow light flowed through the gap. I stepped onto the attic floor. Small footsteps ran behind the door. Nathaniel? The footsteps moved away. I followed. The hatch slammed shut behind me. Then the attic breathed. It inhaled. The air rushed across the floor toward the open door, as though the entire attic had taken one enormous breath. Before I could reach the doorway, something slammed it shut. All 4 doors sealed themselves. There were no clicks, no locks turned. The doors simply became part of the wall. The attic exhaled. The air moved back through the room. I tried the nearest door. It no longer had a handle. Neither did the next one. Nathaniel. I pounded on the door he had entered. There was no answer. I took the walkie-talkie from my hoodie pocket. Nathaniel, please answer me. I know you're inside. You need to talk to me. Static filled the attic. Then there was a click. Nathaniel's voice came through in broken pieces. It showed me our old treehouse. I pressed the walkie-talkie against my ear. It isn't real, he continued, but it feels real. Listen to me. You need to leave. I think I want to stay. No, I hit the door with both hands. It's lying to you. It's building everything from your memories. There was a long silence. Then Nathaniel spoke again. It said you don't belong here anymore. What? It says you got too old. My hands became cold. It says it's too late for you, but it isn't too late for me. That was when I understood. The attic had never truly wanted me. It had used my memories to draw me inside. It had used my curiosity to make me open the doors. But Nathaniel had always been the real target. I'm not leaving without you. I struck the door with the bat. The yellow light around its edges pulsed once, then twice. Then it disappeared. The walkie-talkie became silent. Nathaniel? Nothing. I do not know how long I remained there. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. I searched every part of the attic. I pressed my hands against the walls and ran my fingers through every crack. I looked for loose wood, hidden handles, soft areas, or anything that might open. Nothing moved. The attic had always encouraged me to enter its rooms. For the first time, it had shut me out completely. Eventually, the hatch opened behind me, only a few inches. It felt as though the attic was offering me a choice. I looked at the door where Nathaniel had disappeared. Then I ran downstairs. Mom was standing in the hallway, staring at the ceiling. He's still inside, I said. He went up without me. Her face became confused. Who? Nathaniel? She continued staring at me. He followed the attic's voice. It's doing the same thing to him that it did to you. Honey, what are you talking about? Nathaniel is trapped behind one of the doors. Mom's confusion changed into concern. She took a careful step toward me. The attic doesn't have rooms, she said. It only has old boxes and insulation. Stop it. Grace, my brother is still up there. Mom's voice became very soft. You don't have a brother. That was the final complete journal entry. It has now been more than a year since those pages were written. Today is July 17th, 2026. I do not remember writing most of the journal. There are 6 pages after the final entry. Every page is blank except for Nathaniel's name. It is written again and again in my handwriting. The letters become less clear on each page. By the end, the name is barely readable. The final lines look more like scratches than words. Mom says I am an only child. Dad says the bedroom at the end of the hallway has always been a storage room. At first, I could still find pieces of Nathaniel's life. There were clothes hanging in the closet. There was a second toothbrush in the bathroom. His name was written inside old books. I found a pair of shoes beneath his bed and a school bag hanging behind his door. All of those things are gone now. The bedroom contains boxes, broken furniture, old blankets, and Christmas decorations. There are no photographs of Nathaniel. There are no school records. There are no birthday cards, medical papers, clothes, toys, or messages. There is nothing that proves my brother ever lived in this house. Nothing except the journal. I think the journal is the only reason I still remember his name. There is also an old walkie-talkie sitting on my nightstand. It remained silent for months. Until tonight. A few minutes ago, it crackled beside me. Through the static, I heard the voice of a boy. It was a voice I knew I should recognize. A voice that should belong to someone named Nathaniel. I have written his name 23 times since the walkie-talkie became silent again. Nathaniel, Nathaniel, Nathaniel. But when I close my eyes and try to picture his face, I cannot see him anymore. All I can see is the empty storage room at the end of the hallway. Three weeks ago, my roommate handed me his phone and asked, "Is this you?" At first, I thought he was showing me another stupid prank video. He watched those kinds of channels all the time. They filmed people in public without asking, shouted strange questions at them, and uploaded the reactions for views. Most of the videos were loud, fake, and embarrassing. The video on his screen looked exactly like that. It was filmed outside a coffee shop near our apartment. The camera was shaking as the person holding it walked down the street. Someone behind the camera called out to a man standing near the entrance. That man was me. I only watched the first few seconds. I saw myself turn toward the camera. Confused, my lips moved, and a voice came through the speaker. I stopped the video immediately. The prank did not matter anymore. For the first time in my life, as far as I could remember, I had heard a recording of my own voice. I knew that hearing yourself on a recording could feel strange. Everyone said that. Your voice sounded different when it came through a speaker because you were used to hearing it through your own head. I had read about that before. But this was not just different. The voice coming from my roommate's phone did not sound like a slightly unfamiliar version of me. It did not sound like me at all. It sounded like it belonged to a man in his 60s who had smoked a pack of cigarettes every day since he was 15. It was deep, dry, and rough. Every word seemed scraped at the edges. There was a heavy tiredness inside it. A kind of tiredness that came from years of pain, sickness, or hard living. It was not the voice of a healthy 24-year-old. It was not my age. It did not belong inside my body. When I was growing up, I had spent years in speech therapy. I was born with a cleft palate, and even after the surgery, I had trouble saying certain sounds. Some words came out softer than they should have. My voice had a slight nasal sound, especially when I was tired or had a cold. During therapy, they sometimes showed us videos of other children with the same condition. I remembered how they spoke. Their voices were a little nasal, and some consonants were not as clear, but they still sounded like children. Because of that, I had always carried an idea of my own voice inside my head. I imagined it sounded a little unusual, but still young, maybe slightly high, maybe soft around certain words. Nothing had prepared me for the voice in the video. The sound frightened me before I understood why. It felt wrong in a way I could not explain. Like hearing an old man answer from inside your bedroom when you knew you lived alone. Like looking into a mirror and seeing a face that copied your movements but was not yours. My roommate reached for the phone. "What?" he asked. "You don't remember this? Play it again." He looked surprised, but he tapped the screen. The video started from the beginning. The person filming walked past the coffee shop. He turned the camera toward me and shouted something stupid. I could not even remember the exact question because I was focused on the man on the screen. Me. I watched my mouth open. Then the voice came out again. Low, gravelly old, I made my roommate play it a third time. He was starting to look annoyed. "Does my voice sound like that?" I asked. He stared at me. "What? My voice. Right now, when I talk to you. Does it sound like the voice in that video?" He looked at me as if I had asked whether the sky was above us. "Yeah, obviously." I shook my head. No, listen carefully. I pointed at the phone. Does my voice really sound like that? He let out a small laugh. What are you talking about? That voice sounds old. It sounds like you. It sounds like a 60-year-old man. He frowned and played the clip again, this time listening more carefully. I watched his face. I waited for him to react. I expected his eyes to widen or his mouth to tighten. I thought he would finally hear what I was hearing, but nothing changed. He only looked bored. Well, he said, you sound a little nasal, I guess, like you're congested. But other than that, yeah, that's just your voice. Nasally? I repeated the word slowly. It sounded like something from another language. Yeah, he said. You've always sounded a little like that. Since we met, anyway, it's not a big deal. Not rough? No, not deep? Not really. Not like a man who has been smoking since he was a teenager. My roommate finally laughed. It was the kind of laugh people gave when they thought you were making a joke and were waiting for you to admit it. What? No, you have never sounded like an old smoker. You sound like yourself. He leaned closer. Are you okay? I was not okay. We were listening to the same recording, but we were hearing different voices. I heard something low, damaged, and ancient. He heard me. That frightened me more than the recording itself. I made him play it twice more. Each time, the voice stayed the same for me. Each time, my roommate said he heard nothing strange. Finally, he took the phone back. Relax, he said. It's just some dumb prank video. Then he went to his room and closed the door. I remained on the couch for several minutes, staring at the empty space where the phone had been. I tried speaking out loud. Hello. The voice I heard in the room sounded normal. At least I thought it did. It sounded like the voice I had always heard. Young, a little nasal, maybe softer than other people's voices. I tried again. My name is Daniel. Normal, nothing like the recording. But I could not trust what I was hearing anymore. After my roommate went to bed, I became restless. The apartment suddenly felt too small. Every wall seemed close to me. I kept imagining my roommate listening from his room while I repeated words to myself like a person losing his mind. I took my phone and went outside. The parking lot was almost empty. It was close to 11 at night, and most of the windows in the building were dark. The air was cold enough to make me pull my jacket tighter around my body. I stood beside my car and opened the voice memo app. My thumb hovered over the record button. It felt stupid to be nervous. People recorded their voices every day. They made videos, left messages, sent voice notes, and called into radio shows. None of it was dangerous, but I had never done it before. Not once. At least I could not remember doing it. I pressed record. Hello. I stopped the recording and played it back. The voice came through the phone speaker. Low, rough, worn down. The same voice from the prank video. I almost dropped the phone. I looked around the parking lot even though I knew no one was there. Then I recorded another message. Hi, I played it back. The old voice said the word. It was not close to the one in the video. It was exactly the same. I recorded a full sentence. My name is Daniel, and I am 24 years old. When I played it back, it sounded like a much older man was reading a statement for the police. The voice had no youth in it, no energy. It sounded tired and bitter, as if the person speaking had survived things he did not want to remember. I pressed my fingers against my throat. I swallowed. My throat did not hurt. I coughed once. The cough sounded normal inside my head. Then I recorded the cough and played it back. Even that sounded wrong. Dry, deep, unhealthy. My real voice, the one that existed outside my skull, was not the voice I had been hearing my entire life. Maybe it never had been. I simply had no way to know until 3 weeks ago. My heart began beating faster. I was standing completely still, but it felt as if I had been running. My hands were cold, and a strange feeling moved beneath my skin. It was not exactly fear. It was colder than fear. It was the feeling of learning something about yourself that should have been impossible to hide. I went back inside. My roommate's bedroom door was closed, and his light was off. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. There was no chance I was going to sleep. I found the prank video again. The thumbnail showed the street outside the coffee shop. The title was something stupid about embarrassing strangers. The video had thousands of views. I clicked on it. This time I decided to watch the whole thing. The video was about 90 seconds long. It began with shaky footage from across the street. The person filming laughed while walking past the coffee shop. I waited for myself to appear, but I did not. The camera moved toward the entrance. The sidewalk was empty. The man behind the camera shouted something at someone off screen, laughed to himself, and kept walking. That was all. I frowned and dragged the progress bar back to the beginning. I watched it again. The same coffee shop, the same street, the same voice behind the camera. But I was not there. No one stood near the entrance. No one came out of the shop. No one answered the person filming. I went back to the exact moment I remembered. Nothing. I refreshed the page. The video loaded again. Still nothing. I checked the channel name. It was the same channel. I checked the title. Same title. Same upload date. Same thumbnail. I opened my browser history to make sure I had not clicked another video by accident. It was the same link. 5 minutes earlier, I had watched myself turn toward the camera. I had heard a voice that could not belong to me. Now both the image and the moment were gone. It was as if I had imagined the entire thing. Except I had not been alone. My roommate had handed me the phone. He had asked if the man in the video was me. He had watched it with me. He had heard me speak. I had not imagined that. I opened the comments. There were hundreds of them. People laughed at the jokes and complained about the person filming. Some argued that the pranks were fake. Others said the channel should stop bothering strangers. I searched for anything about the coffee shop. Nothing. I searched for comments mentioning a man outside the entrance. Nothing. No one asked where I had gone. No one mentioned someone answering the cameraman. No one said anything about a strange voice. I checked the comments again, moving slowly through them until my eyes hurt. There was nothing. Eventually, the screen dimmed because I had stopped touching the keyboard. I remained at the table, staring at my reflection in the black part of the screen. I tried to remember the exact words I had said in the video. I could not. I remembered my mouth moving. I remembered the sound of the voice. But the words themselves were missing. The next morning, I decided there was one person who might know the truth. My father. I waited until my roommate left for work, then sat alone in the kitchen and called him. He answered after 3 rings. "Hi, Dad. Hey. Everything all right?" "Yeah. I just have an odd question." There was a pause. "What kind of question?" "Do we have any videos of me from when I was little?" I tried to make my voice sound light, like it was only a random thought. My father answered immediately. "Nothing like that. You know that." I looked toward the hallway. "Why don't we?" "You never liked cameras. I thought you always said I didn't like hearing my voice." There was silence. Then my father said, "I don't remember saying that." His answer surprised me. "You said it all the time." "No, I didn't. When I asked why there were no videos, you always said I hated the sound of my voice." "I don't remember that." I pressed my free hand against the table. Maybe he had forgotten. People forgot small conversations. Parents forgot things they had said years ago. But this had not been one conversation. It had been the answer every time. Whenever other families watched old home videos, I asked why we did not have any. My father always told me I became upset when I heard myself. He said I used to cry and cover my ears. I had believed him because I was a child. A child did not question a rule like that. No videos, no recordings, no voice messages. It became part of normal life. Like a locked cupboard you were told never to open. Eventually, you stopped asking what was inside. Did you record me after my surgery? I asked. No. What about speech therapy? They handled that at the clinic. They never sent home any tapes? No. What about school plays? You weren't in any. I was in one in 5th grade. My father did not respond. I remembered it clearly. I had played a tree. I stood at the back of the stage wearing a green paper hat while other students sang. One of the teachers filmed the performance. My father had told me the recording was lost. Dad, I'm here. Did you ever hear my recorded voice? Another pause. The silence felt different this time. Why are you asking me this? I heard myself in a video. What video? Some prank channel filmed me outside a coffee shop. Delete it. I don't have it. Then forget about it. I can't. My father breathed slowly into the phone. I lowered my voice. Did my voice sound different when I was little? No. Did it sound rough? No. Did it sound like an old man? Stop. The word came out sharply. I went quiet. My father had never spoken to me like that before. I'm only asking because something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. My roommate and I heard different voices in the same recording. That doesn't make sense. I know. Then you probably misunderstood. I recorded myself afterward. He did not say anything. The voice is wrong, Dad. Daniel. It sounds old. Enough, his breathing became heavier. I thought about my mother. She had left when I was young. That was the word everyone used. Left. No one said where she had gone. My father said she needed a different life and did not want contact with us. When I asked about her, he became quiet or angry. I had almost no memories of her. Sometimes I remembered long hair moving past the doorway. Sometimes I remembered a hand touching my face. Sometimes I remembered a woman singing softly in another room, but I could never see her clearly. It was as if someone had removed her face from every memory. Did Mom ever record me? I asked. The line became silent. Not ordinary silence. It was the kind of silence that appeared when someone was trying not to react. I waited. Dad? Still nothing. I checked the screen to make sure the call had not ended. The timer continued moving. Did Mom make any recordings before she left? My father finally spoke. Don't. His voice was low. Don't what? Don't bring her into this. I only asked if she recorded me. Leave it alone. Why? Because I said so. I'm not a child anymore. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it. He did not answer. I could hear him breathing. For a second, I thought I heard another sound in the background. A woman's voice. It was very faint, almost hidden beneath the sound of the line. I could not understand the words, but the voice seemed close to him. Who's there with you? I asked. My father went completely quiet. Dad? Stop listening. The way he said it made my body go cold. What do you mean? Daniel, listen to me. Stop recording yourself. I gripped the phone tighter. I didn't tell you I was still recording. He ended the call. I sat alone in the kitchen for a long time. The apartment was completely silent. I called him back. He did not answer. I tried again. The call went straight to voicemail. I almost left a message, but when I heard the beep, I froze. I had never heard my father's voicemail greeting before. It was only a few words. You know what to do. But the voice speaking those words was not my father's voice. It was mine, not the voice I heard inside my head. The other one, the old, rough voice from the video. I ended the call. For the rest of the day, I tried to convince myself there was a normal explanation. Maybe my father and I had similar voices. Maybe the phone connection made him sound different. Maybe stress was changing what I heard. Maybe I was sick. I searched online for problems that caused people to hear their voices incorrectly. I found information about ear pressure, hearing loss, anxiety, and neurological conditions. None of it explained why my roommate heard something different in the same recording. None of it explained why the video had changed. None of it explained how my voice had appeared on my father's voicemail. That evening, my roommate came home. I met him near the door. "Can I ask you about the video?" He dropped his keys into a bowl. "What video?" "The one you showed me yesterday." He looked confused. "The prank video. I show you a lot of videos. The one with me outside the coffee shop." His face remained blank. "You handed me your phone and asked if it was me. I don't remember that." My stomach tightened. "Yes, you do." "No. We watched it together." He opened the refrigerator. "Are you sure you're not thinking of something else? You said my voice sounded normal." He stopped moving. For 1 second, something changed in his face. It was very small. His eyes lowered. His shoulders became stiff. Then he reached inside the refrigerator and took out a bottle of water. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You do." He closed the refrigerator. "You should get some sleep. Play the video again." "I don't have it. It was in your history." I cleared it. "Why?" He twisted the bottle cap. "I clear my history all the time." "You never clear your history." He did not answer. "Look at me." He raised his eyes. "Did you show me that video?" "No." The answer came too quickly. I stepped closer. "Do I sound like an old man to you?" His face changed again. This time, I saw fear. Not confusion, not concern. Fear, but it disappeared almost immediately. "You sound normal," he said. "What does normal mean?" "You sound like you." "What do I sound like?" He stared at me. I waited. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "What do I sound like?" I asked again. He moved past me toward his bedroom. "I'm tired." I grabbed his arm. He pulled away so hard that the water bottle fell from his hand. "Don't record yourself," he said. I froze. He looked as surprised as I felt. "What did you say?" "Nothing. You said the same thing my father said." "I didn't say anything. You told me not to record myself." He backed away. "Go to bed, Daniel." Then he entered his room and locked the door. That night, I sat in the parking lot again with my phone. I opened the voice memo app. There were 3 recordings from the night before. "Hello, hi. My name is Daniel, and I am 24 years old." I stared at them for several minutes. Then I played the first one. "Hello," the voice was still old and rough, but there was something else beneath it. A second voice. Very quiet. I turned the volume up and played it again. The old voice said hello. Behind it, someone whispered. I could not understand the word. I played the recording through headphones. The whisper became clearer. It was a woman. She said my name. "Daniel." I played the second recording. The old voice said hi. The woman whispered behind it again. This time, she said, "Can you hear me?" My hands began to shake. I opened the third recording. The old voice said, "My name is Daniel, and I am 24 years old." Beneath it, the woman spoke for longer. Her voice was weak, but I understood every word. "That is not your voice." I removed the headphones. For several seconds, I could only hear my breathing. Then I looked at the screen. A fourth recording had appeared in the list. I had not made it. There was no title. The recording was 3 minutes and 12 seconds long. The date beside it was 20 years earlier, I almost deleted it. Instead, I pressed play. At first, there was only static. Then I heard a child crying. A woman spoke softly in the background. "It's okay, try again." The child took a breath. "Hello," the voice was young, a little nasal, soft around the consonants. It was exactly the voice I had always imagined I had. The woman began crying. "Oh, Daniel," she whispered. "That's you. That's really you." A man spoke from farther away. "My father. Turn it off." The woman ignored him. "Say something else, sweetheart." The child sniffed. "My name is Daniel." My heart stopped. I knew that child was me. My father came closer. I said, "Turn it off." The recording shook. There was a loud sound, like the phone or camera had been knocked onto a table. Then another voice entered the room. Low, rough, old, the same voice that came from my mouth now. It said, "He can hear us." The woman screamed. The recording ended. I sat inside my car until morning. I do not know what is happening. I do not know whether the voice belongs to me. I do not know what happened to my mother. I do not know why my father spent my entire childhood making sure I was never recorded. I have not spoken to my roommate since last night. He left early this morning and has not returned. My father will not answer his phone. I keep listening to the old recording. Each time I play it, the voices change slightly. The child sounds farther away. The old voice sounds closer. And the woman, who I think may be my mother, keeps adding new words. The last time I listened, she said something that was not there before. "Daniel, it has been speaking for you since you were 4. I have not spoken out loud since then. I am afraid that if I do, I will hear the voice inside my head instead of the one everyone else hears. Or worse, I will finally hear what has been answering for me all these years." My phone is lying on the table beside me. The voice memo app is open. The red recording light has been on for almost an hour. I never pressed record. A new audio line moves across the screen every few seconds, even though the apartment is completely silent. At least, it sounds silent to me. The recording has not stopped. I am too afraid to play it back. A minute ago, my father sent me a text. It only said, "Do not let it hear you think." I stared at the message until another one appeared. This one came from my mother's old phone number. It said, "It already has." Sorry to pause for just a moment. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the calm so far. If you'd like more nights like this, true stories, gentle rain, no interruptions, please subscribe to Lacuna Noir. It really helps me keep creating these peaceful experiences for you. And tap the bell so you're here every time a new story arrives in the dark. Now, back to the story. He was funny. That was one of the strangest things about him. Even after the way we had first met, the cigarette problem, the endless bodies lying along the road behind us, and all the impossible things I had already seen, the hitchhiker was still somehow funny. He had a dry, sharp sense of humor. Most of his jokes were aimed at himself, but even those felt like insults. He spoke as if we had known each other for years, like we were old friends who had survived something terrible together and had earned the right to make fun of it. There was something almost comforting about that. Almost, we were still driving down a road that did not seem to belong to any normal part of the world. The sky was too dark. The shadows moved when they should not, and the bodies along the roadside continued so far into the distance that I had stopped trying to count them. The hitchhiker sat beside me with one arm resting against the window. His cigarette glowed between 2 fingers. He looked relaxed. I was holding the steering wheel so tightly that my hands had started to ache. at some point during our strange conversation. He mentioned that he was an artist. I looked at him. What kind of art? He smiled. I'm a comic artist. You know the funny books? He asked the question as if I were 5 years old. Then he winked at me. The wink did not make any sense. Nothing about his expression suggested he was joking, but everything he said sounded like a joke. Before I could answer, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small notepad and a black pen. He rested the notepad on one knee and began to draw. I glanced at him, then back at the road. You're joking, I said quietly. He kept drawing. I draw comics too. The hitchhiker let out a deep laugh. It came from somewhere low in his chest and filled the inside of the car. I know. I looked at him again. He did not look up from the page. Why the hell do you think you're here? My mouth went dry. What does that mean? I should probably introduce myself, he said, but let me finish this first. He moved the pen quickly across the paper. The lines were rough and wild. They crossed over one another again and again until they formed a large black shape in the middle of the page. It did not look like art. It looked like the kind of drawing someone might make during a breakdown. A thick mess of ink, a dark stain, a scribble made by a hand that had forgotten what it was trying to create. I wanted to ask what it was supposed to be. Then something appeared on the road ahead. At first, it was only a shadow. Then it became darker. It spread from one side of the road to the other until it formed a solid wall of blackness in front of the car. My heart jumped. I took my foot off the gas. The hitchhiker looked up from the page and started laughing. Keep the wheel straight. The wall rushed toward us. What is that? Straight. He shouted. Keep it straight. I tightened my hands on the wheel. The black wall filled the windshield. The hitchhiker began laughing harder. Just keep your foot on the gas. We don't want to get lost in here. The car entered the darkness. Everything disappeared. The road vanished. The hood of the car vanished. Even the dashboard lights seemed to weaken until I could barely see my own hands. There was no sky, no road, no sound from the tires. It felt as though the car had been swallowed by something much larger than itself. I kept my foot pressed against the gas pedal because the hitchhiker had told me to, but I had no idea whether we were still moving. The darkness was complete. It did not feel like night. Night still had shape. It had distant lights, stars, clouds, and shadows. This darkness had nothing. It felt endless. I stared forward and tried to keep the wheel straight. Then I saw something far ahead of us. At first, I thought it was a city. It seemed that large. A huge shape floated in the distance, blurred around the edges. It had no clear form. Its body changed as I watched, folding and opening like a jellyfish carried by a slow ocean current. It moved without touching anything. There was no ground beneath it, no sky above it. It simply existed inside the darkness. The sight of it made my chest tighten. My heart began to beat in painful, uneven movements. I could not understand its size. My mind tried to compare it to buildings, mountains, or clouds, but none of those comparisons worked. It was too large. It felt as though I was looking at something that had never been meant for human eyes. Beautiful, the hitchhiker whispered. I turned slightly toward him. He was staring at the creature with a peaceful smile. Every time I get to look at it, I get shivers. He lowered his eyes and began drawing again. I wanted to see what was appearing on the page. I wanted to ask him what the creature was, but I could not look away from it. The shape in the darkness seemed to pull at my thoughts. The longer I watched, the less aware I became of the car. The steering wheel faded beneath my hands. The sound of my own breathing disappeared. My body seemed very far away. I felt myself floating forward, leaving the car behind. The creature opened something that might have been an eye, or a mouth, or neither. My thoughts began to spread apart. I could no longer remember where the road had started. I could no longer remember the hitchhiker's face. For one terrible moment, I could not remember my own name. "I told you," he said from somewhere far behind me. "We don't want to get lost in here." His voice moved through the darkness. "Come back." There was a sudden flash of white light. A car burst out of the blackness. I gasped and nearly pulled the wheel sideways. The road returned beneath us. The dashboard lights came back. The engine roared loudly as though it had been screaming the entire time. My foot relaxed from the gas pedal. I could feel my body again. My back was pressed against the seat. My hands were shaking. Sweat ran down the side of my face. I looked through the windshield. The world had changed. The ocean stretched along the left side of the road. Dark water reached toward the horizon. Waves crashed against rocks below us. The air had the pale gray color of a stormy afternoon. A few moments earlier, we had been driving through the middle of Oregon. Now, we were on the coast. My mind tried to understand the distance we had traveled. It failed. The hitchhiker closed his notepad. "We're just getting started," he said. That was enough for me. I slowed the car and pulled to the side of the road. The tires rolled onto wet gravel. I stopped the engine and opened the door. Cold air struck my face. I stepped outside and took several deep breaths. There was no traffic. No other cars moved along the road in either direction. The only sound came from the ocean and the wind. I could smell salt and rotting seaweed. The sharp, wet smell filled my nose. For the first time since this strange journey had begun, everything around us was still. There were no shadows moving between the trees. No birds with human faces watched from the power lines. No thin creatures walked beside the road on legs that were too long. There were no bodies. There was only the empty coast. My body began to tremble. It was not only fear. It felt like all the panic I had been holding inside me was finally being released. I bent forward and placed my hands on my knees. The hitchhiker stepped out of the car. He leaned his folded arms on the roof and smiled at me. "What's going on?" I asked. "Things are different now." I looked up and down the road. "Are we in Washington?" He pushed his hair away from his eyes. "Yeah, how?" He ignored the question. "I didn't want you to miss the boat ride. It's my favorite part." He reached into his jacket and pulled out another cigarette. "As a horror fan, I think you'll appreciate it." He lit the cigarette. Smoke moved away from his face and disappeared into the wind. For the first time since I had picked him up, I truly wanted to leave. Curiosity had brought me this far. Every strange thing had made me want to see the next one. I wanted answers. I wanted to know what waited beyond the road and why I had been chosen to see it. But standing beside the ocean, I realized I might not want to know. Some mysteries were safer when they stayed unexplained. Some nightmares should remain dreams. "I think I've seen enough," I said. The hitchhiker smiled. "No, you haven't. I want to go back." "You can't go back yet. Why not?" He took a slow drag from his cigarette. "Don't worry. The little creatures around the road don't exist here. That doesn't make me feel better. They're only there to keep the wrong people out." The wrong people? The riffraff. He said it casually, as though the terrible creatures and endless bodies had been security guards standing outside a private club. I looked around again. He was right about one thing. There was nothing strange near us. The coast was empty. Then I noticed a tugboat moving through the bay. It was small and dark, with smoke coming from its engine. The boat pushed through the rough water and headed directly toward us. The hitchhiker watched it approach. "I'll tell you this," he said. "We aren't in the world you know anymore." I turned toward him. "What does that mean?" "This place exists beyond your world. It is less connected to reality and more connected to creation." He tapped the ash from his cigarette. "The fact that you're an artist is a good thing. Why? Because artists understand that something can be real without existing." The tugboat came closer. "There's a piece of this place inside everything creative," he continued. "Stories, paintings, music, dreams, nightmares. Every person who creates something reaches toward this place, even if they don't know it." I stared at him. "Are you saying imagination comes from here?" "Not exactly." "Then what are you saying?" He smiled. "I'm saying imagination sometimes opens a door." The tugboat reached a small wooden pier I had not noticed before. Its engine slowed. Thick ropes moved through the air and wrapped themselves around metal posts without anyone touching them. The hitchhiker dropped his cigarette and crushed it beneath his shoe. "Come on," he said. "We'll talk while we travel." I looked back at the car. It seemed safer than the boat. That thought almost made me laugh. Nothing about the car had been safe. Still, it felt like the only normal object left in the world. The hitchhiker walked toward the pier. I followed because I did not know what else to do. The tugboat sat low in the water. Most of it was open deck. A small wheelhouse stood above the main level, reached by a short metal ladder. The hitchhiker stepped onto the boat easily. He crossed the deck without losing his balance, then climbed the ladder toward the wheelhouse. I jumped from the pier onto the deck. The boat moved beneath me. My stomach dropped. I had never liked boats. The floor did not stay where I expected it to stay. Every wave lifted the deck and then lowered it again. I moved carefully, stretching my arms slightly for balance. The ocean had always frightened me. It was too wide, too deep, too uncontrolled. A forest could hide things between trees. A house could hide something behind a wall. But the ocean could hide anything. Entire mountains could exist beneath it. Creatures larger than buildings could move through its depths without anyone seeing them. The water was rough. I crossed the deck one slow step at a time until I reached the ladder. Holding the cold metal helped. I climbed toward the wheelhouse. The hitchhiker stood inside, smoking again. He laughed when I stumbled through the doorway. A man stood at the wheel. Everything about him was gray. He wore a gray raincoat with the hood pulled over his head. A long white beard hung against his chest. His skin looked pale and colorless, almost like wet paper. One of his eyes appeared to be made of glass. The other looked forward without blinking. I was surprised he did not have a wooden leg. The hitchhiker leaned against the wall. "Don't have your sea legs, do you?" "No, I grew up in Maine," he said. "My father was a fisherman." He looked through the rain-covered window. "I've always liked the strange horrors people imagine in the ocean. Lovecraft had the right idea about that." The rain became heavier. It struck the roof of the wheelhouse like handfuls of small stones. "The deep ocean can hide a lot," he continued. "Forests are frightening, sure, but the ocean is a nightmare that can swallow you whole." When he said the word nightmare, I remembered my bag. I had left it inside the car. My bag contained my sketchbooks, pencils, and several old comics. One of those comics was an issue of Nightmare, a rare series that had become almost impossible to find. I left my bag in the car. The hitchhiker laughed. "No, you didn't." He pointed toward the floor. My bag sat beside him. I stared at it. "That wasn't there. It is now. You didn't bring it." I never said I did. The bag looked strangely bright inside the gray wheelhouse. It was one of the only objects that still had strong color. The hitchhiker reached down and opened it. He moved a few things aside, then pulled out my copy of Nightmare. I haven't seen one of these in a long time, he said. He looked at the cover. I heard most of the original copies were collected by one strange bastard. He glanced at me. Do you mind? Before I could answer, he opened the comic. That was when I realized who he was. The face was older than the photographs I had seen, but not by much. That should have been impossible. The photographs had been taken decades earlier. The man standing in front of me was Kane Holland. Holy shit, I whispered. Kane removed the comic completely from the bag. I'm glad you don't keep it sealed in plastic, he said. Never understood that. He looked up and saw my expression. You're a fan, then? I could not answer immediately. Kane Holland had been one of the most unusual comic artists of the 1970s. His work had influenced horror comics for years. His stories were strange, violent, personal, and sometimes impossible to understand. Then he disappeared. No confirmed death, no body, no final interview, nothing. He simply vanished. Kane smiled. I was never good at meeting fans. Too many expectations. He turned another page. They expected me to be friendly. I'm not good at that kind of thing. Give me my money and go away. He laughed. Don't make it strange, all right? Never meet your heroes. That sentence moved through my mind. Most of my heroes were strange people anyway. Writers, artists, filmmakers, people who had built their careers out of nightmares. Sometimes I met one who was normal. That was often disappointing. I had never known how to behave around people I admired. I usually said the wrong thing and sounded like an idiot. Yep, I said. The word left my mouth before I could stop it. I immediately hated myself for saying it. Kane returned to the comic. I never liked what I did in this issue. I stared at him. What? Too self-aware. Too much about the story, knowing it's a story. He smiled. I hope you don't mind that kind of thing. This whole journey has some of those qualities. He laughed again. The tugboat had left the harbor. The coast became smaller behind us. Gray rain covered the windows. A flash of lightning appeared far away, followed several seconds later by a deep roll of thunder. Kane turned another page. It has been a long time since I worked on this. He shook his head. It looks amateurish. Shut up, I said. The words came out before I could control them. Kane raised an eyebrow. That comic is amazing. The art is on another level. Another level? He looked down at the page again. Lucy, he said. I liked her as a character. He paused. Could never stand her in real life. I looked at him. The sentence made no sense. Lucy was a character in the comic. At least, I thought she was. I decided not to ask. Kane closed the book and studied me. You really don't know why you're here, do you? I thought you were dead. Disappeared, he corrected. That was the rumor. He placed the comic on his lap. Comic artists have active imaginations, especially the ones I knew. He smiled. I heard one story where I became a cult leader and murdered everyone in the cult. He waited. You heard that one? I nodded. There was another rumor that I went mad. Another one said I sold my soul to the devil for my talent. He looked amused. Then the devil came to collect and took my body. The gray captain continued steering. He did not react to anything Kane said. Some people said I studied the occult, Kane continued. That I performed magic. Did you? Maybe he slipped the comic back into my bag. Maybe not. He closed the bag. Some things are better kept secret. The boat rocked harder. I placed one hand against the wall. Kane watched me. You're probably wondering why I brought you here. You brought me here? Kind of. He tapped ash into an empty metal cup. This place is collaborative. What does that mean? He slapped the gray captain on the back. I love this guy. The captain did not move. Kane took a yellow rain jacket from a hook and threw it toward me. Put that on. Why? I want to show you something. I don't want to see anything else. You'll like this. He left the wheelhouse before I could argue. I put on the rain jacket and followed. Kane climbed down the ladder easily. For a man who should have been around 80 years old, he moved like someone half that age. He did not look 80 either. His career had begun in the 1970s. The numbers did not make sense, but almost nothing had made sense since I had met him. The freezing rain struck my face as I climbed down. The tugboat rose and fell beneath us. When I reached the deck, a wave rocked the boat hard enough to make me lose my balance. Kane grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back of the boat. He laughed the entire time. We stopped near the rear rail. "Look behind us," he said. I stared at the stormy water. "Unfocus your eyes." "What?" "Stop trying to look directly. Let your eyes relax." The waves rolled behind the boat. White foam moved across the dark surface. My stomach twisted. Bile rose into the back of my throat. The land had disappeared. There was nothing around us but ocean. Kane suddenly began shouting. Then his shouting became a howl. The tugboat struck a large wave and jumped upward like a frightened horse. I fell forward. My hands caught the metal rail before I went over it. My heart slammed against my chest. There was nothing between the ocean and me now. Only the rail. Only a few inches of wet metal. I stared down. At first, I saw nothing. Then I saw a dark shape beneath the waves. It appeared in pieces. A curve, a shadow, a line too large to belong to any normal animal. The shape grew clearer. It was enormous. It dwarfed the tugboat. It might have been 100 times larger than us. My body suddenly felt very small. The ocean was large enough to hold anything. Beneath the waves, something colossal moved behind the boat. It rose closer to the surface. A faint green glow appeared below the water. Then part of the creature's skin broke through. It was not gray like the sky, the boat, or the captain. Its body glowed with deep emerald light. The color moved across its skin in slow waves. Its surface was covered with eyelids. Thousands of them. Millions, they opened one after another. Eyes of different sizes stared up at us. Some looked human. Others were long and narrow. Some were round and black. Some contained colors I had never seen before. Kane howled with joy behind me. "It's looking at us." The eyes focused on the boat. My mind began to fail. Looking at the creature felt like taking every drug in the world at once. My brain burned with electricity. My thoughts became bright and wild, then heavy and black. Images entered my head too quickly to understand. Cities beneath the ocean, people with empty faces, hands drawing worlds into existence, a mouth opening somewhere beyond the stars. I saw myself sitting at a desk, drawing this exact scene. I saw Kane standing behind me. I saw the creature looking up from the page. Then it dived. The emerald light moved beneath the tugboat. The whole vessel lifted slightly as the creature passed below us. For 1 second, the ocean became still. Then the creature rose behind the boat. Its body exploded through the surface. Water crashed in every direction. The back of the tugboat lifted into the air. The deck tilted beneath my feet. The boat was being carried upward on the creature's body. We were seconds away from turning over. I held the rail with both hands. My mind could not understand what I was seeing. The creature was darkness and madness given physical form. Its eyes continued opening. Each one seemed to contain a different nightmare. The rain fell upward around it. The ocean bent away from its body. The sky appeared to crack. Behind me, Kane Holland laughed like a madman. Ah ha 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 ha. His laughter rose above the storm, above the engine, above the sound of the ocean breaking around us. And as the creature carried the tugboat higher, I realized Kane was not frightened. He was welcoming it, like an old friend, like something he had drawn long ago, like something that had finally come to take him home. A while ago, I was in a very difficult financial situation. I was behind on several payments, my savings were almost gone, and I needed to make money quickly. I did not have time to wait for a normal job application process, so I started walking around the street where I had grown up and asking people if they needed any work done. I offered to cut grass, remove rubbish, clean backyards, move old furniture, or do anything else that paid cash. It was not the kind of work I normally did, but I was desperate enough to take whatever I could get. One of the first people I asked was a neighbor I had known for years. I did not know him personally, but I knew his face. We had spoken several times in the past, usually when we happened to meet on the street. He was in his 50s and had always seemed quiet, polite, and friendly. He lived in a large house near the end of the road. When I explained that I was looking for work, he offered me $200 per day to clean his property. That was much more than I expected. The reason became clear as soon as he showed me the backyard. It was enormous, probably around 1,000 square meters. Dead leaves covered most of the ground. There were broken chairs, old tables, bags of rubbish, pieces of wood, rusted metal, damaged tools, and other things that had been left outside for years. The property had 2 houses on it. My neighbor lived in the main house, which was in good condition. Farther back on the property stood another building. It was a large, ruined 5-bedroom house that had been abandoned for as long as I could remember. Even when I was a child, people said nobody lived there. Its windows were dirty or broken, the walls were stained with damp, and parts of the roof looked ready to collapse. Tall weeds grew around it, and several trees had spread their branches across the walls. I did not own a truck or any proper equipment for moving rubbish, so my cousin offered to lend me his minivan. I told him I would give him $100 for helping me, but he refused. He had recently become a father and was also struggling with money, so he understood how important the job was to me. He only asked me to be careful with the van and clean it properly when I finished. For the first 2 days, nothing unusual happened. The work was exhausting, but the money was good. I filled bags, loaded broken furniture into the van, and drove rubbish away. My neighbor came outside a few times to check on me, but he mostly stayed inside the main house. The abandoned house made me uncomfortable, but I did not pay much attention to it. It was simply an old building. At least that was what I believed. On the 3rd day, I brought lunch with me, but forgot to bring water. I ate around midday and continued working beneath the sun for several more hours. The weather was hot, and there was almost no shade in the middle of the backyard. By the afternoon, I was exhausted. My shirt was soaked with sweat, my mouth was dry, and I felt lightheaded every time I stood up too quickly. I was about 50 meters from the abandoned house when I decided to walk to the main house and ask my neighbor for water. Before I moved, I happened to look toward one of the windows in the old building. My neighbor was standing behind it. At least I was sure it was him. The glass was dirty, but I could clearly see his face. He stood in the darkness of the room, looking directly at me. Neither of us moved. We stared at each other for around 5 seconds. Then he slowly stepped away from the window and disappeared. I remember thinking it was strange that he was inside the abandoned house, but I assumed he was checking something. I walked across the yard and reached the old front door. I knocked. Nobody answered. I knocked again, louder this time. Hello? The building remained silent. I called my neighbor's name. There was no movement inside. I knocked a 3rd time and placed my ear near the door, but I heard nothing. The silence inside that house felt deep, It was not the normal silence of an empty room. It felt as though someone was standing just beyond the door and holding their breath. I stepped away. Maybe he had left through another entrance. Maybe I had been mistaken about what I saw. I walked toward the main house, which was around 200 meters away. My neighbor opened the door only a few seconds after I knocked. He was wearing normal indoor clothes and looked completely relaxed. I asked if he could give me some water. Instead of bringing a glass, he opened the refrigerator and handed me a cold 1.5-liter bottle. "A glass won't be enough if you're working out there," he said. "Keep the bottle." I thanked him and drank almost half of it immediately. Before returning to work, I asked him a question. "Why were you watching me from the old house?" His expression changed at once. The friendly look disappeared from his face. "What?" "I saw you standing in one of the windows." He looked past me toward the abandoned building. "Which window?" I pointed to it. For several seconds, he did not speak. He seemed genuinely uncomfortable. "That wasn't me," he finally said. "It looked exactly like you. You've probably been in the sun too long." He tried to smile, but it did not look natural. Then he lowered his voice. "If you see anyone in there again, don't go near them." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "Don't approach them. Don't speak to them. Come directly here and tell me. Has someone been breaking into the house?" He did not answer. He only told me to drink the water and remain close to the van. I returned to work, but I kept looking at the abandoned house. Nothing appeared in the windows. After a while, I convinced myself that the heat had affected me. I was tired, thirsty, and standing in bright sunlight. It was possible that I had seen a shadow or my own reflection. I worked for another 2 hours. By then, the sun was beginning to disappear behind the trees. The air was cooler, and I was ready to leave. I loaded the final bag of rubbish into the minivan and closed the rear door. Then, I looked toward the abandoned house. Someone was standing in the doorway. From that distance, the person looked exactly like my neighbor again. He did not wave. He did not call my name. He stood with one hand resting against the doorframe and watched me. I remembered the warning. Do not approach them. Do not speak to them. I pretended not to see him. I got into the minivan, locked the doors, and started the engine. The figure remained in the doorway. I drove toward the entrance of the property. That was when I discovered the gate was closed. It had never been closed while I was working. I stopped and waited, thinking my neighbor might open it. Nothing happened. I looked in the mirror. The figure was still standing in the doorway of the abandoned house. I drove back toward the main house. I needed the gate opened, and my neighbor still had to pay me for the day. I parked near his front door and knocked. Nobody answered. I knocked again. Still nothing. I took out my phone and called him. I could hear his phone ringing inside the house. He did not answer. I waited on the front step. Then I heard footsteps on the gravel behind me. They were slow. One step, then another, then another. Someone was walking toward me. I did not turn around immediately. I stood completely still and listened. The footsteps came closer. Then they stopped. For a few seconds, I was too frightened to move. When I finally looked behind me, nobody was there. The driveway was empty. The doorway of the abandoned house was also empty. Its front door, which had been open a moment earlier, was now closed. I turned back to the main house and knocked harder. "Hello?" Something moved inside. I heard footsteps or furniture shifting. Then I heard what sounded like the front door being locked from the other side. I stepped back. A few seconds later, the gate at the end of the driveway began to open by itself. I did not wait. I ran to the minivan, climbed inside, and started driving toward the gate. It opened painfully slowly. For several seconds, the space was not wide enough for the van. I kept pressing the brake and checking the mirrors. Then I saw him. The figure was standing directly behind the van. He was much closer now. His face was pale. From a distance, he had looked exactly like my neighbor, but now I could see small differences. His clothes were different. His face was thinner. His skin looked older and more damaged. He was smiling. It was not a friendly smile. It looked as though he expected me to recognize him. I locked the doors. He began walking toward the driver's side. The gate finally opened wide enough. I pressed the accelerator and forced the minivan through the gap. The side mirror nearly struck the gate, but I did not slow down. The man did not chase me. He stopped in the middle of the driveway and watched me leave. I looked back one last time. My actual neighbor was standing at an upstairs window of the main house. He was watching me. The moment he noticed me looking, he stepped behind the curtain. My payment arrived later that night. My neighbor sent the money electronically, along with a message apologizing for not answering the door. He claimed he had been in the shower. He said he had opened the gate remotely after hearing the van. I knew he was lying. When I saw him at the upstairs window, his hair and clothes were completely dry. Still, I needed the money. I did not want trouble, so I decided not to return to the property. I tried to forget the entire experience. A few days later, my cousin called me. He had been cleaning the minivan before installing his baby's car seat. While checking beneath the rear bench, he found a black plastic bag pushed far underneath it. Inside the bag were 11 printed photographs. Every photograph showed me working in the backyard. Most of them had been taken from the windows of the abandoned house. One showed me carrying rubbish bags. Another showed me sitting outside and eating lunch. Another showed me drinking the bottle of water my neighbor had given me. There was a close-up of my face. The final photograph was the worst. It showed me standing at the main house that evening, waiting for someone to answer the door. The photograph had been taken from only a few meters behind me. Whoever took it had been standing close enough to touch me. My cousin wanted to know how the bag had entered the van. I had kept the keys with me the entire time. One of the rear doors sometimes failed to lock properly, so someone could have opened it. But that did not explain why they had left the photographs inside. There was no note, no demand, no warning. It felt as though whoever had taken them wanted me to know I had been watched. At first, I was frightened. Then, I became angry. My cousin was angry too. We decided to return to the property the following afternoon. We wanted answers. The gate was open when we arrived, but my neighbor's car was not there. We parked near the main house and knocked for several minutes. Nobody answered. My cousin then looked toward the abandoned house. I saw someone move, he said. An upstairs window was empty now, but he was certain someone had stepped away from it. We walked toward the building. We shouted that we knew about the photographs. This time, the front door was not locked. When my cousin knocked, it opened slightly. A terrible smell came from inside. It was a mixture of damp wood, cigarette smoke, dirty clothes, and spoiled food. The outside of the house looked abandoned, but someone had clearly been living there. A mattress lay on the floor. Empty food cans and water bottles were scattered around it. Old newspapers were stacked against the wall. There were cigarette ends and cups and plates with dried food on them. Then we saw the photographs. Dozens of them covered one wall. Most showed my neighbor entering or leaving the main house. Others showed people walking along the street. Some were taken during the day. Others had been taken at night. There were even photographs of my cousin's minivan from several days before I started the job. That meant whoever lived there had been watching us before I ever entered the property. The front door closed behind us. A man spoke from the hallway. Why did you come back?" At first, I thought it was my neighbor. Then he stepped into the light. He was thinner than my neighbor and looked older. A large scar ran from his ear down the side of his neck. His face was similar enough to my neighbor's that I could have mistaken them from a distance. He stared at the photographs in my cousin's hands. "They weren't meant for you," he said. "Who were they meant for?" I asked. "My brother." Before we could ask what he meant, someone outside began shouting. It was my actual neighbor. He stood in the yard and yelled at us to leave the house immediately. The thin man became agitated. His hands began shaking, and his eyes moved between us and the door. My cousin grabbed my arm. We pushed past the man and ran outside. My neighbor closed and locked the door behind us. He finally told us the truth. Or at least what we believed was the truth at the time. He said the man inside was his older brother. According to him, his brother had serious mental health problems and had secretly been staying in the abandoned house. He said he had not told anyone because he was afraid the authorities would take his brother away. I asked why he had hired me to work so close to the building. He claimed he thought his brother had left several weeks earlier. He also said he had no idea how the photographs had entered the van. We left and never returned. My neighbor transferred the money he still owed me, plus another $400. He asked us not to contact the police. We reported everything anyway. When officers searched the property, the abandoned house was empty. The mattress was gone. The food cans were gone. The newspapers and photographs had disappeared. There was no sign that anyone had been living there. My neighbor then told the police that he did not have a brother. He claimed my cousin and I must have confused the man with someone else. The police could not do much. We had no photographs because my cousin had dropped them inside the house when we ran. We had no video. We had no proof. About a month later, my cousin called me after putting his baby to sleep. Someone had left another black plastic bag inside the minivan. This time, the van had been locked inside his garage all night. There was only one photograph in the bag. It showed my cousin and me standing inside the abandoned house, looking at the wall of photographs. The picture had been taken from directly behind us. Written across the bottom in black marker were the words, "I told you not to talk to him." After that, we decided not to discuss the situation anymore. We tried to return to normal life. Whenever we met for a beer, one of us sometimes mentioned it briefly, but neither of us wanted to talk for long. The entire thing felt unfinished. Part of me kept thinking about returning to the property. I knew my cousin was thinking the same thing. He repaired the faulty lock on the back door of the minivan. Then one day, he sent me a message. "We need to talk." The message was about exactly what I expected. Neither of us had been sleeping properly. What frightened my cousin most was knowing that someone had entered the minivan even after he repaired the lock. His wife and newborn baby were at home. He no longer felt safe. His wife knew nothing about what had happened. As far as she understood, my cousin and I had gone out for lunch and decided to spend the day together. We returned to the property because we wanted answers. I have a black belt in karate, and my cousin has trained in MMA for around 10 years. Neither of us wanted a fight. We were not looking for an excuse to hurt anyone. Still, my cousin brought the metal bat he kept for protection at home. He had also brought it during our previous visit, but I had not mentioned it because it did not seem important at the time. It became very important later. We parked on a narrow road behind the property. From there, we could see both houses through the trees. We sat inside the minivan and waited. Nothing happened for around 90 minutes. Then my phone rang. It was the owner. "I can see you," he said immediately. He claimed one of his security cameras had detected the minivan. He said he was not at home. I confronted him. I asked about the photographs, the man he had called his brother, and how someone had entered the van after the lock had been repaired. He avoided every question. He only told us to leave. Before I could push him further, we heard a sound directly behind the van. One footstep in the dead leaves. Then, silence. A few seconds later, someone slowly pulled the rear door handle. The repaired lock held. Whoever was outside tried it again. My cousin and I remained completely silent. Neither of us moved. For almost 2 minutes, we listened for footsteps or breathing. Eventually, my cousin switched on the headlights and started the engine. The thin man stood directly behind the van. One hand was still raised near the rear door. My cousin pressed the accelerator. The man moved aside at the last possible moment. He did not chase us. He simply watched as we drove away. I was still on the phone with the owner. I told him who we had seen. He ended the call without saying another word. We stopped at a petrol station and checked the minivan. My cousin searched the rear door, the tires, and the area beneath the van. Then he picked up the metal bat. A small listening device had been taped beneath the handle. He had carried the bat into the abandoned house during our previous visit and had briefly left it on the floor. The device contained a small memory card. My cousin inserted it into his phone. There were several audio recordings on it. One had been recorded at the exact time the photograph of us inside the abandoned house was taken. We listened carefully. In the background, an unidentified man whispered, "He keeps bringing people here." And then, he blames me. My cousin and I sat inside the petrol station drinking hot black coffee. We could have contacted the police again. But we already knew what would probably happen. They would search the house. The building would be empty. The evidence would disappear. We would be left with more questions. Eventually, I said I was going back. I told my cousin I would enter the abandoned house myself. He stood so quickly that I thought he was going to stop me. Instead, he threw me the keys. "This ends tonight," he said. We removed the listening device from the bat and returned to the property. The place felt different this time. The air seemed heavier. It felt as though someone already knew we were coming. For a few minutes, the situation felt like a suspenseful film. Part of me even enjoyed the rush. That feeling did not last long. I called the owner after we entered the property, but he did not answer. We ignored the main house and went directly to the abandoned one. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the dining room no longer looked abandoned. A professional Sony camera sat on the table. Beside it were batteries, memory cards, rolls of tape, and several devices identical to the one we had found on the bat. We turned on the camera. It contained thousands of photographs. The files were organized by names and dates. There were folders for previous workers, delivery drivers, neighbors, and people who simply walked past the property. My folder began on the morning I had first knocked on the owner's door and asked for work. It included pictures of me entering the property, carrying rubbish, eating lunch, drinking water, speaking to the owner, and driving home. My cousin had a folder, too. There were photographs of him at work, at petrol stations, outside his home, near his wife and baby. We also found video recordings. Several showed the owner and the thin man removing everything from the abandoned house before the police searched it. At first, it looked as though they were working together. Then we found photographs of the owner opening the minivan and pushing the first black bag beneath the rear seat. My phone rang. The owner knew we were inside. He ordered us to leave everything where it was and get out. I confronted him with what we had found. I told him the police had confirmed that he had no brother and that no member of his family had ever been placed in a mental health institution. There was a long silence. Then he said, "If you know I put the photographs in the van, you found the camera." He finally began telling us the truth. The photographs had been planted by him. He wanted me to stop working on the property. The thin man was not his brother. He was a stranger who had secretly lived in the abandoned house for 2 or 3 years. The man had watched the owner and threatened to kill him if he warned anyone. The owner said he had contacted the police once before. They searched the property, but found nothing. That same night, the owner's dog disappeared. Several days later, the dog's collar appeared on his doorstep. After that, the owner became too frightened to ask for help again. He hired me because the thin man had not been seen for several weeks. He believed the man had finally left. When I saw someone in the abandoned house, the owner panicked. He could not openly warn me because the thin man watched the main house. So he took photographs of me and planted them in the minivan, hoping they would frighten me enough to leave. It had worked. For a while. The owner also admitted that he had attached the listening device to the bat. During our previous visit, he had followed us into the abandoned house and hidden inside a storage room. While placing the device beneath the bat's handle, he saw the thin man take a photograph of us from the hallway. That explained why the audio recording and photograph had the same time. They had not been working together. One man had been hiding from the other. The video showing them clearing the house was also different from what we first believed. When we watched it again, we noticed the thin man holding something against the owner's back. It looked like a knife. Then we heard footsteps on the floor above us. My cousin picked up the bat. The thin man appeared at the top of the staircase. He looked down at us. "You shouldn't believe everything he tells you," he said. He claimed the owner brought desperate workers onto the property. He said the photographs were warnings. For a moment, we did not know who to believe. Both men had lied. Both had watched us. Both had entered the minivan. Then my cousin asked a question. "How do you know where my wife and baby live?" The thin man smiled. He pulled out a knife. Then he began walking down the stairs. My cousin struck his forearm with the bat. The knife flew from his hand and landed across the room. The man attacked anyway. The fight lasted around 3 minutes. That may not sound long, but 3 minutes is a very long time in a real fight. It was not controlled like training. It was not clean. It was violent, confused, and desperate. The thin man repeatedly tried to reach the knife. My cousin dropped the bat after the first strike because he did not want to kill him. We used our fists and kicked his legs and body while trying to keep him away from the weapon. He did not stop. Even after being hit several times, he continued coming toward us. He seemed more frightened than angry, but that fear made him dangerous. By the end, all 3 of us were exhausted. The man was bleeding and could barely stand, but he remained conscious. We stopped once he could no longer follow us. We deliberately avoided hitting his head or doing anything that might cause permanent damage. My cousin kicked the knife farther across the room. We moved backward toward the door. The thin man remained on his knees, breathing heavily. What disturbed me most was that he was still smiling. We ran to the minivan. The owner was still on the phone. He said he had called the police. He apologized for using us and admitted that his fear had placed us in danger. I understood that losing his dog had traumatized him. I understood why he was frightened. But that did not excuse what he had done. He had lied to us. He had planted photographs. He had allowed me to work near a dangerous man without explaining the risk. In a strange way, he was lucky that my cousin and I were the people involved. Most people would have stayed away after the first incident. We were angry and reckless enough to return. This time, the police found everything. They found the camera, fingerprints, listening devices, and thousands of photographs showing the thin man stalking people far beyond the property. He was arrested later that night, inside an empty building nearby. He was badly injured and had left a trail that helped officers find him. Police identified him as a man who had been reported missing almost 4 years earlier. He had a history of stalking, burglary, and violence. Inside the building, they found cameras, stolen clothes, copied keys, and photographs of my cousin's wife and baby. They also found the owner's dog's collar. The investigation did not end at the abandoned house. Police discovered several listening devices and miniature cameras hidden throughout the owner's main house. He had no idea they were there. After finding those devices, they searched my home and my cousin's home. In my bedroom, they found a listening device hidden beneath the base of the lamp on my bedside table. Another device was discovered in almost the same place inside my cousin's bedroom. We still do not know when the man entered our homes. We do not know how long he had been listening. Police told us that the photographs, copied keys, and recordings suggested we were not only being watched, we were probably going to become his next targets. They believed that if we had waited much longer before returning to the property, the situation would have become worse. The owner was investigated too. He had planted the photographs, lied about having a brother, and removed evidence before the earlier police search. In the end, neither my cousin nor I blamed him completely. That does not mean what he did was right. But after learning what happened to his dog and seeing how deeply the thin man had entered all our lives, we understood his fear. All three of us have families and animals we care about. None of us can honestly say how we would behave in the same situation. We did not press charges against the owner. My cousin sold the minivan. He said he would never feel safe driving it again. The abandoned house was boarded up. The owner continued living in the main house. He apologized again and sent me everything he owed me, along with the extra money I had previously returned. He later asked whether I would continue cleaning the property. I probably will. The dangerous man is gone, and I still need the money. Police offered to show us the remaining photographs connected to us. My cousin is still deciding whether he wants to see them. For a while, I thought I might say yes. Part of me wanted to know how long we had been watched. I wanted to know where the man had followed me. I wanted to see whether there were photographs taken inside my home before the police found the listening device. The man is in custody now. The abandoned house has been sealed. As far as I am concerned, it is over. But I still have not looked through the remaining photographs, and I never will. Look, if you're still watching, you already know what this channel is. No jump scares, no fake drama, just real stories about real people who survive things most of us can't even imagine. And that's scarier than any movie could ever be. If you want more of this raw, unfiltered truth, told the way it deserves to be told, subscribe to Lacuna Noir. We're not here to waste your time. We're here to tell the stories that actually matter. Thanks for listening. Now go get some sleep, if you can.